With God, all things are possible to them that believe. Now let's admit right away that there are some problems that can't be solved in this world, and death is one of them. It's just a reality. But let's note this. If there's another reality than this world, and a compassionate God, then death will be solved in that next reality. Sure, on earth, we can learn to cope with the loss of a loved one and go on living. It's painful. It's hard. We can do it. Time can be a great healer. Sometimes a second marriage can transform our life and help make up the void. And friends. Friends can love us at incredible depths if we are open to that, but it's still true that some problems have no solutions this side of the grave. Those are not the kind of problems I want to talk to you about today. There are, interestingly enough, a lot of problems that we think are in this first category that are really not. Some of you will naturally be possibility thinkers, and others of you will not. For instance, linear thinkers who think in a straight line kind of way may get stuck. If you're someone who's got to do everything step by step, and if you can't see your way forward, you get blocked or stuck when an obstacle sits in your way. Some of our problems are like doors. You can't go through a door without a handle. I used to have a large, ginger, Maine Coon cat. I would often watch him sit patiently at the door. You see, if he knew how to operate the handle, the door would not be a challenge for him. But because he didn't know that, he'd sit patiently, stymied. I'm wondering, are you perhaps just a little bit like my cat? You know, there are some cats that I know of who actually swing on the handle and open the door. One of the best ways to deal with a door kind of problem, I've found, is to believe in yourself. You see, if we lack self-confidence and believe we can't solve problems, we won't even bother to look for a handle for the problem. The very first thing, then, that we need when confronting a problem is to believe that it can be solved. And we need self-confidence to even get that far. You know, in my life I've found that the first step in building self-confidence is to find someone who believes in you. Someone who says, I believe in you, you've got possibilities. Now all of us, if we think back over the lives we've had, have people who, when the chips were down, were there for us in a big way. And if we listen to our inner voice, we can still hear their encouragement over the smell of the grease baked and the roar of the crowd, saying, you can do it, good job, well done, atta girl, atta boy. Or in the silence, there can be a soft hand that steals into ours and squeezes it, conveying love and support in our time of trouble, support for which there are no words. I can remember a time in Stratford when the farmers were hit very hard economically. A farmer was running for political office. He had to make his first speech before a city crowd. He was very nervous because he was much more comfortable among farmers than with the city cat. Not long before he got heckled, lost his place in his notes, stumbled, grew red in the face, just about to sit down, and suddenly from the back of the room came a great roar from a burly farmer. Tell them how we're hurting. Tell them our livestock are dying. Tell them about the drought, the high cost of feed. Tell them about the suicides. You can do it. We believe in you. There was this stunned silence for a moment. Suddenly, the would-be politician saw red, threw his notes away, and he told them all right, night after night, riding by riding, he remembered those words, you can do it, we believe in you. He swept to victory at the polls. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever had it done for someone? Have you ever done that for somebody else? have you affirmed someone in a crowd and watched the energy turn? Here's a primary law for success when you're discouraged. Listen for that voice in your personal history, that special person who believes in you, and then summon your courage and go for it. Once we've got this cheerleader standing behind us, once we've shaken off the lack of self-confidence, we can begin to tackle the challenge. Most problems that are tough to solve are a question of not thinking big enough, or clearly enough, or creatively enough. And all it takes is one great idea to break through the logjam. One good idea can put a handle on your toughest problem, and the door will open, and you will walk through. I once knew a man who was completely paralyzed below his shoulders, all except for the fingers in one hand. He was depressed, feeling trapped at the whims of others, confined to a bed in a nursing home. One day, a possibility thinker came to his ward and said, "I think you can get around in a power wheelchair, George." And George said, "I can't afford that." And his friend said, "Well, let's get some money." 2 weeks later, he was back with a brand new power wheelchair paid for by the folks at his church. Last time I saw George, he was whipping down the hall, off to see a friend on the second floor. You know, when Robert Schuller, who started to build a church, he had these possibilities. Number one, rent a school, rent the Masonic Hall, rent an Elks Lodge, rent a funeral home chapel, rent an empty warehouse, rent a community club building, rent a Seventh-day Adventist church, rent a Jewish synagogue, rent a drive-in theater, rent an empty piece of ground, a tent, and folding chairs. Well, after trying all the easy ones with no success, Schuller decided on number 9, the drive-in theater, and the rest, they say, is history. Robert Schuller built the most amazing crystal cathedral edifice, a worldwide successful TV program. You know, Stratford took Schuller's 10th idea of a bare ground and a tent to begin the Stratford Festival. The problem in Stratford economically was, what are we going to do about the loss of the railway shops? Whoever would have thought that Shakespeare would be the answer to that question? In the gospel lesson this morning, we came across the story of the call of Peter and Andrew. Now, what did Jesus see in these men? Well, somehow he conveyed to these two men two things. I believe in you. You've got possibilities. Come be my disciples. Now, why these men? They were rough, tough fishermen who were used to storms, success, failure, and hardship. They'd learned the value of persistence. Anybody who ever fishes learns persistence. And these guys were in their own business. What did Christ see in these men? Well, we don't know, but we do know he saw possibilities for later. He was to say to Peter, "Thou art Peter. On this rock I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." And 2,000 years later, the church is present all around the world with millions of followers. Imagine for a moment that you're Peter, and you're about to found the Christian church, and all you know how to do is fish. Staggering, isn't it, how the church began with fishermen? But you know, those disciples had to learn possibility thinking. After toiling all night for a catch, they were about to give up when Jesus, the possibility thinker, showed up and showed and suggested that they fish on the other side of the boat. They were dubious, but they risked, and suddenly there was a great draft of fishes. The things that Jesus did changed his disciples' view of what was possible. When you believe that with God all things are possible, when you hear the voice of Jesus within you say, "I believe in you," you've got possibilities. Answer my call. The incredible potential of your life can open up before you in a very big way. Deepak Chopra writes, "When you discover your essential nature and know who you really are, in that knowing is the ability to fulfill any dream you have, because you are the eternal possibility, the immeasurable potential of all is, and will be. Schopenhauer thinks that underlying the infinite diversity of life is a kind of unity of one all-pervasive spirit. St. Paul describes this same spirit as the one who is in all, and through whom all things came to be. This universe, this earth, this world is a manifestation of the life of that spirit. The creation is alive, it lives and breathes as we do. It all began as an idea in the mind of God that manifested. On our website, we're posting photos of your experiences in nature. I'm reminded of what native chief Dan George once wrote. He said, "The beauty of the trees, the softness of the air, the fragrance of the grass speak to me. The summit of the mountain, the thunder of the sky, the rhythm of the sea speak to me. The faintness of the stars, the freshness of the morning, the dewdrop on the flower speak to me. The strength of fire, the taste of salmon, the trail of the sun, and the life that never goes away, they speak to me, and my heart soars." Witnessing this same phenomenal world, Gerard Manley Hopkins, a brilliant poet, wrote, "The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It's going to flame up like shining from shook foil, generations have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod, and for all this nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things, and though the lights of the west went, oh, morning of the brown brink eastward springs, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and all bright wings." The Bible says that you and I are co-creators with this God. We're made in the image of God. We're privileged to create life in the womb. Because we partake in the same life as God, we can begin an idea, seek to manifest it, because we're players here, just as God is. When and if we decide out of gratitude to turn our lives over to God's direction, we open ourselves to the field of all possibilities, and all things become possible for us. Handles spring suddenly onto shut doors, and we can pass through. You know, it's a very exciting thing to do, to give yourself back in gratitude and trust to the God who made you. Is to fall in love with the Creator of all living things, for even the inanimate is alive with God's life. Jesus said the rocks would cry out if the disciples were to be quiet when he was entering his destiny in Jerusalem. So you and I can be plumbing, teaching, farming, building, doing dentistry, painting a picture, working in human resources. You can be a pastor, I don't recommend it, a doctor or nurse, an Olympic athlete or astronaut, programming computers, working for the government, or ourselves, whatever. We can even be out fishing on a northern lake when God's Spirit may come to us and say deep within, "I believe in you. You've got possibilities. Follow me." And if we answer the call, then the slow miracle of our lives begins to unfurl. Church can be a place for possibility thinkers to feel at home. People who want to start again, leave their old lives of failure behind them, like broken fishing nets on the shore. A single mother called Emily, who had to work at minimum wage, struggled with her self-esteem. You see, her marriage had failed and she was divorced. She built defenses around herself so that people would not get too close. She continued to wear her wedding ring as a way to protect herself. "After all, who would ever want to marry me?" she said. Her job was a long drive away. There were no buses out there, and she couldn't afford taxis. So with a few savings left to her following her divorce, she bought an old car, and that meant she could keep her job. She barely made enough to scrape by, however. But one day, on her way home, close to her neighborhood garage, her car broke down. They looked at it and gave her a price of $850 to get it fixed. She had to leave it at the garage. She walked home and she cried all the way. Life is just too hard, she thought. Next day, she got a ride to work from a co-worker who lived near the plant, who came all the way in to pick her up. She told her what had happened. Emily authorized the repair, not knowing however she was going to pay for it. The next day after work, she went to pick up the car. She took her last $50 out of the bank, intending to use it as a starter payment for the repair, hoping they would release the car to her. She went into the garage, and the boss said to her, "I got something to show you." Went over to her drawer and pulled it open. Inside was all kinds of money and small bills. He said, "It began this morning. People kept coming in from where you work and dropped off money. My mechanics heard about it and only charged 25% of their hourly rate. It's all fixed. You only owe me $15. Emily suddenly realized what had happened. Her fellow workers believed in her, that she had possibilities. When she got home, she stood in front of the mirror for a long time and slowly took off her protective wedding ring off. She put it away in a drawer. Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee, and he saw two brothers casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Come with me, and I'll make you fishers of men." And at once they left their nets and followed him. Suddenly in these men's lives, a whole string of new possibilities. Today, we at Knox are a result of that very conversation. What is God saying to you in your heart about possibilities? And what's going to be the result of that conversation? Amen, and may God bless you.